With so much change and uncertainty afoot today in our world, in our nation, and in our state, I want to tell you today that I am struggling. Perhaps you are struggling as well. I am struggling both to keep up with the changes and to figure out what I can do, how I can lead Kent State University as its president. And right now, my biggest challenge is to distinguish between what I can influence and lead directly versus spending my energies and efforts on situations I do not control and most likely cannot influence. And if I focus my efforts and anxieties on the latter, as much as I find myself going in that very direction, I am not then spending my efforts on things that I can lead and can directly influence. By training, I am an historian of 20th century Latin America, and you cannot be a historian of 20th century Latin America and not study and learn about authoritarian governments, military rule, right-wing military juntas, and leftist revolutionary regimes, as well as authoritarian populism on both the left and the right. And whether we are talking about authoritarian governments on the left or on the right, and whether we are talking about left-wing revolutionary rule or right-wing military juntas, a couple of things have always stood out to me about these authoritarian governments. One is that they challenge the rule of law, bending it to serve their personal political ambitions and oftentimes their personal and familial financial interests. The other is that authoritarian regimes come to power in the midst of polarization and violence, and authoritarian leaders usually justify their actions by attacking their opponents as enemies. In these cases, opponents are not deemed to be just wrong, but evil. They are not just opponents, but they are now enemies to be eliminated. Referring to your political opponents as being not just wrong, but also evil is what I mean when I refer to a polarized civil discourse. I lived in a country during a military dictatorship in Brazil, and let me tell you, civic dialogue and discourse were not encouraged either by the regime as it arrested and tortured and killed thousands of people, nor by armed guerrilla groups on the left. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this for two reasons. First, to let you know that by my training, the way I view the world as an historian, it drives me to make comparisons between the past and the present, which then leads me to worry about a host of tendencies, trends, and current events that I cannot control directly. And that in itself isn't a bad thing, except that it does become hurtful if that worry and anxiety prevents me from working on things I have more influence over and, in some cases, some amount of control over. And so, I'm making these remarks for a second reason. At Kent State, you have heard me say this many times. We know the price of exercising freedom of expression, and we know that violence, death, and destruction can accompany polarization and poisoned discourse. We know what happens when intolerance of opposing viewpoints turns people we don't agree with into enemies. We have with us today, literally here with us today, individuals who were wounded on May 4, 1970, and we have with us today, literally with us today, relatives of the students gunned down on these very grounds on that day of violence and on that day of death and on that day of sorrow. All of this is why we have and why we follow our core value of kindness and respect. We do so because at Kent State University, we know what happens when distrust, when violent rhetoric, and when polarization reign. We know what happens when political opponents are transformed into demons. We are here today at this event because of our history. As I conclude, please know that even though I am anxious about what is happening today, I am driven to influence what I can influence because of our core values. Via this commemoration and via our policies and procedures, we will continue to promote kindness and respect, and the value not only of learning, but also the value of learning to get along with people who disagree with us. This is the Kent State way, and there is no better moment than this one to recognize it, and to recognize that it is who we are, and it is our guiding beacon during these stormy times. Kindness and respect. And I'll add one more word: dignity. Dignity, which the dictionary defines as, quote, the state or quality of being worthy of honor and respect, end quote. Our returning wounded students with us today are worthy of honor and respect. And would our students who were wounded on this site at this moment on May 4, 1970, please rise so that we may recognize you. Would our wounded students here today please rise? Thank you, and please join me in sending good thoughts to Dean Kaler, who could not be here today as well. And finally, with the relatives of Jeffrey Glenn Miller, Allison Beth Krause, Sandra Lee Scheuer, and William Knox Schroeder, who are with us today, please rise and give a wave so that we may recognize you. Thank you. All of you are worthy of our honor and respect.